Good evening, and welcome to the October 2021 Good evening.
And cut. Take two.
All right, we'll try this again. Good evening, and welcome to the October 2021 Milford Board of Education regular board meeting. We're going to open this meeting with a call to order, and our roll call, please.
Mr. Miranda?
Here.
Mr. Yockey?
Here.
Mrs. Brady?
Here.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Here.
Mr. Ham?
Here, thank you. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 4, which is the approval of tonight's agenda. We need a motion.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments, changes? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes of our regular board meeting from September 16th of 2021. We'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, changes? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Yockey?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. We're going to move on to item B, which is our presentation. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce Josh Kaufman, our Director of Fine Arts and Extracurricular Activities.
Good evening, President Ham, Superintendent Spicer, Board of Education. It's again my privilege to highlight some of our student artists in the district. This month we will be featuring artists from Milford Junior High. So if I could ask our featured artists to please come up, as well as Ms. Whitty, who is one of our junior high teachers who could be here tonight. I have to tell you, if you look at the boards on the front of the room, I was so impressed when I picked up the work. I genuinely thought I was picking up high school work. The quality of your artwork is exceptional, beyond your years. It's really magnificent. So thank you for your talent and sharing your gifts with us. Your artwork will be hung in the lobby of central office over the next month, so the entire community can enjoy it. Congratulations. We have a certificate to recognize your work accomplishment. Hannah Bond. And Hannah's is the sketch at the bottom. Down here, does it have a title? No title. Untitled. Which is Catherine Cardell, and she has the diamond print from kind of a printmaking. Right? Yeah. Congratulations. Ms. Taylor Cathcart, she has the 3 different representations of the horse over here. I understand she has horses from all over her room. I love her part. Congratulations. And we have Ms. Riley Ebeslage. She has the Snow White animation cell in the top right over there. And we have Van Lewis Rogers, who has the top printmaking of these skulls over here. And one of our junior high students, Miss Sophie Stewart, she has the top left cell animation of, I understand, Kirby from Maybe the World of Super Mario or Super Smash Brothers. My sons would be very proud that I knew that. So, again, I believe art's at the heart of what we do in Milford, and thank you for the opportunity
done by everyone. We'll move on to item number 2, and that is our superintendent's presentation. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board, members of the audience. Thank you for being here this evening. I will direct your attention to our screen. We do have, I mean, he's adorable back there, isn't he? Waiting for the presentation to come up, and we're waiting for a microphone. What number is your microphone? Red means it needs a battery.
5.
Number 5, we'll get him a battery. Okay. So this evening's presentation, I'd like to clarify our story, some things that were presented to us at the last board meeting, comments that were made, and next slide, please. And I think the first thing is that there's definitely some misinformation on standards and the decline of standards here at Milford, which is simply not true. We do have some data for you. I've asked Paul Daniels, our Director of Secondary Curriculum, also our Coordinator of Testing, to walk us through this a little bit. And most importantly, there's an independent article by the Cincinnati Enquirer that talks about proficient or higher percentage of students and where Milford ranks. So I'm going to turn this over to Paul for this first slide.
President Ham, members of the board, to our audience, good evening. Just wanted to take a few minutes to highlight information from the state report card this year. As we know, the state did collect the data. It is not being used to grant any overall report card grades or will not be factored into teacher evaluations, value added, but it is a good gauge of our progress during the second full year of the COVID pandemic. We do want to make sure that the general public has an understanding of why there are some blips on the radar in terms of our test scores. First and foremost, you'll take a look at the third grade. You'll notice that's about a 12% drop during the pandemic. 10% of our students did not test. Districts were not penalized for students who did not test. We had 46 third graders that did not test. Those are counted as zeros in your scoring for proficient, so that's why you'll see that as an outlier on the sort of the third grade reading score on the spring OST. So that's important to note. As a district, we worked really hard to try to meet families where they were last year. We actually had a remote day at the high school where we brought on several occasions all of our elementary Eagle Online students in. We made it convenient so it would be one testing opportunity, one stop. But again, we also did some testing which was individual, one-on-one. If a parent requested that, we maybe had times where we had 7 students 10 feet apart in this room, so we really tried to work hard to meet the needs. And one of the reasons why we think that number is a little lower in terms of the percentages and the number of students who did not test, about 9.68%, is because this is the first time a family in the third grade would encounter the Ohio State tests. K-1-2, you don't take any standardized tests for the state. We do our diagnostics, Ames Web, COGAT, Iowa, CRAE, CRAWL, all those tests in those early foundational years. But this will be the first time that a student takes an official Ohio State test, that third grade math and reading. So in comparison, we had 46 non-test takers in the third grade. That drops to 7 in the fourth grade, 11 in the fifth grade, 13 in the sixth grade, 8 in seventh grade, and 12 in eighth grade. So you can see that's a significant difference based on sort of those other language arts numbers. I think the other thing that's important to notice, you'll see sort of a flip-flop of 45 negative and 40 plus. Math grade 7, math grade 8, we did a realignment. We moved our accelerated students out of the 7th grade band. That test didn't really match the pre-algebra that they were taking. Moved them into the 8th grade. It does show us that we have a significant weakness in grade 7. Does match sort of the prior year. So we are already doing that work with our 7th grade teachers, doing some standards realignment, looking at our end of unit assessments inside of our Envision program, and they do have access to a math coach one day a week who's working with them as they co-plan and team plan. The other thing is, while our American history looks about 8.3% less, we actually only tested American history in the fall. The state allowed us to do a waiver on that because it's not a federally reported test. So we chose as a district not to issue that test in the spring. Typically our students who are enrolled in APUSH, which is AP US History, and our juniors who are in American history would take that test in the spring. This is just students who needed a retake. So that's not really an accurate measure of that American history. So, and then our American government, we also saw some exponential growth there. So as you can see, we held pretty steady in the ELA range. I think that was a general consensus amongst our staff as we went across the year. ELA standards sort of spiral back. There's a great opportunity for teachers to sort of work that back in. Math was and has been sort of maybe the universal weakness in terms of where districts saw the biggest hit in the pandemic. Our students lost a quarter of math at the beginning, then followed up by kind of the full year where we were operating Eagle Online and in person simultaneously with that choice for parents. So we're aware of where we are in the workload and what we need to do. I think it's also important to note, if you look at the chart, Steve, you want to hit that PDF for me from the Inquirer. It's important to note that we're 9 from the bottom. I'll wait till he pulls that up. We are 9 from the bottom in terms of, this is the percent drop in proficient scores. So we're 9th from the bottom, meaning that that's a true testament of our students, our staff, our technology team that we were able to flip into the Eagle Online piece. We had 1,262 kids in Eagle Online. That's roughly about 19.68% of our students were in Eagle Online. That's typically, there are school districts in Ohio that don't have 1,262 kids. There are high schools that are that size. So to be able to flip into that mode, it really is a true testament to all those, our staff, our students, our parents, our tech team, getting those devices, those programs up and running to make sure that we're in a reasonable place not to have extensive learning loss. So like we said, of the 49 schools linked by the Inquirer, we only saw a modest loss of 7.6%, really close to about the 6 below us. You can also sort of look at, we look at the wealth, we look at where they were the year before. But I think what we know is that we're in a good starting place as we begin the year. There is also a difference. When you drill down into some of the data, you'll see about some places an 8 to 10% difference between students who are in Eagle Online versus students who are in person. So that also has a bit of a skew on the data. Like 7th grade math is a great place there. Students who are with us in person, they did about 9% better on the test than those that were Eagle Online. Again, that's not a judgment, that just takes into account why you'll see some of the fluctuation. It is not rare, I mean, it's not unusual for us to maybe flip 4 or 5 points in some of these categories year over year. Sometimes we're, you can see sometimes we're 78, the next year we're 77, and then we're to 69. So we think we're in a good place. We'll continue to use the tools that we bought with our ESSER funding. I know John's going to talk about that. But this is where our MAP testing comes in, where we're looking at where our students are in the continuum. What will they need? Will they need a year and a half's worth of growth, a year and a quarter's worth of growth to get back to where they were pre-pandemic? And then we'll also use the tools that we have, maybe our core curriculums like our Carnegie program has inside of it algebra, geometry, algebra 2. It has AI software that's predictable. Our teachers will use the Envision, ReadyGen. They'll use Math Investigations, some Ames Web, just to make sure that we're constantly recalibrating our kids to make sure that we can move from a -7 to a positive number. But we do see, we're really proud of the lack of loss. I mean, 7% loss in proficient when you have some districts who are up in 26% really speaks to just the entire community effort of our students, our parents, our staff, and our curriculum and tech team. I think Dr. Dunn being able to get a device in all the hands, we got Wi-Fi for folks that didn't have it. We were purchasing tools so that we could flip our core programs into a mode where they could be done remote. So it just really was an entire village effort, and I think it shows at the end of the year that we were at the bottom in terms of what the Inquirer and what the loss of proficient scores looks like for the year.
Any questions for Paul?
One of the things I remember that we went through was when we determined we were going to offer parents the opportunity to be in person or go to Eagle Online. I remember we were, we really wanted to make sure that the online program matched as closely as it could with our in-person program. It was Milford teachers teaching Milford curriculum. Do you think that had an impact on that from last year, that we did teach our curriculum to our students and didn't contract that out to an Apex or somebody else?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, our teachers have the experience of that core program, so we weren't training a teacher in anything. So we had our teachers teaching what they have been for years. What they had to do was to find a way for some of it to become remote. What were the best instructional practices for that? How did they do that? So that was a big piece of it, but they were able to move quicker. They were able to streamline more efficiently because they were using all the tools that we had bought. And as a district, we were well positioned. We were in Schoology 312 already. We had that. Rob brought in K2. That allowed us to use that learning management system, which, while it's hard for a kindergartner and a first grader and a second grader to get accustomed to a learning management system, our teachers had the knowledge of all the other pieces that they used every day, some of them for several years. So that does make a huge impact. And our tools go through the curriculum that we align with the state standards, that goes through an extensive vetting process. So we've learned from this. I think one of the questions we'll ask moving forward as we vet new products is how quickly can we flip what we buy into a remote setting without losing time, fidelity, and disruption of the continuum of learning.
Anyone else, members of the board? All right, let's go to the next slide. The other topic that I'd like to discuss is per pupil expenditures. You can see up here, on average, we are at 3.345% increase per year. There was a comment made that our per pupil expenditures were skyrocketing. With inflation on average being anywhere from 1.5 to 2% per year, I don't believe that would be considered skyrocketing. The state per pupil expenditure is $12,691. We are about $1,475 less than the state average. We currently have about $49 million in a cash reserve, which is unheard of in many districts, which I think speaks to our fiscal responsibility that we have had. The last time a levy was passed in this district was May of 2013. That's a levy that was supposed to last for 3 years. If that does not speak to fiscal responsibility by our treasurer, our board members, and our administrators, I don't know what it does, if not that. The thing about a percent increase per year is that we're in the people business. That's what we do. We hire people. That is our capital. It's human capital. We negotiate agreements with our 2 unions, and therefore there is going to be an increase every single year unless we negotiate zeros with them. So again, I just want to say that this district is and has been and will continue to be fiscally responsible, and our per pupil expenditure is not skyrocketing. Next slide, please. There was some comments about the COVID relief funds, and certainly going back to our fiscal responsibility, we use Ohio checkbook. We are transparent. You can see all transactions. But as far as COVID goes, you can see that we have 4 buckets of where we are placing our COVID monies. The district did receive about $7 million in relief funds. Those relief funds must be spent by September of 2024. 20% of those dollars must be used for learning loss. So we do have a learning loss plan that is on our website, that is also connected to the Ohio Department of Education, had to be turned into them. One item under personnel that I would specifically like to address, and I want everyone to hear this very clearly, that teachers were not given bonuses. Teachers were given a stipend as a part of a negotiated agreement. It's a 2-year contract extension. Stipends are a one-time payment. They do not compound over time. So it's a benefit to us and to them. It was a win-win. So let me say it one more time. Teachers did not receive a bonus. I think it's very important for us to know that. Again, I can't speak to our transparency enough. There's Ohio checkbook. The 4 buckets, curriculum and instruction. Again, 20% of that will be spent on that. That is part of our learning loss plan. I encourage you to take a look at our learning loss plan online. If you have not, it is on our website. Again, safety and cleaning. One thing that is important to note is that we do have budgeted for HVAC as well. So we'll be spending quite a bit of the COVID relief dollars on the HVAC here in the district as well. That was brought up, I think, last time as well. Next slide.
John?
Yes, I'm
on that-
sorry.
Oh, no problem. On that slide regarding the HVAC, we've already started that, right? Before we started school in the 2020-21 school year, a lot was done.
Yes,
with that.
we upgraded filters to MERV 13 filters, et cetera. Jeff can speak specifically about some of the HVAC if we want specifics, but yes, that work has happened. We're also working with a consultant on the current HVAC and how we can best utilize those dollars on our HVAC systems.
Yeah, maybe just a quick comment, because I had the question asked of me online, that these are all federal monies. And federal monies are reimbursed monies. We don't get these monies up front. So when you mentioned that our cash balance was $49 million as of this month, that doesn't include any of these federal monies that we're going to get. We have to spend the money first and then have that money be reimbursed.
Correct. Any other questions on that last slide? Very good.
Also along those lines, because they're federal monies, everything has to run through the state and everything. All the budgets, what we're spending it on, all has to run through the state and be approved at the state level as well.
So it's approved before we do it. Okay, thank you. My final slide this evening is social emotional learning. I think the first thing I want to say is that we do not teach critical race theory at all. I have had emails sent to me about social emotional learning. I've had emails sent to me about our students and their mental health and their needs. And I know this. I know that Will Cates is our mental health coordinator. He is a professional, master's degreed, licensed practice counselor. He has worked with the Miami Township Police Department in their crisis unit, and I'm going to trust his professional judgment. And his professional judgment states that we are going to use the Panorama. It is not connected at Milford in any way with critical race theory. We do not teach critical race theory in any way. We do follow the Ohio Department of Education, the strategic plan that discusses what SEL is, which is self-awareness, social awareness, relational awareness, empathy, responsible decision-making. Not all of our students come to our schools equipped with those, and we will help them. And I think one thing that's important to note is that we did introduce the Panorama to high school last year. We did find that some of our students struggle with grit and persistence. We do have an advisory where students are with that same teacher all year long. We did incorporate some lessons for them to work on grit and persistence, and we measured it over time. It does match with our portrait of an eagle, and we will continue to do that. You know, at the end of the day, we value our parents and their input. That's why they were allowed to opt out of the survey. They're allowed to opt out of any survey. It was sent out prior to. You have copies of the survey. That survey, nothing in there is critical race theory. You know, we do want to make sure that our students have the best educational experience they can have. And again, this is the road and the path that we are down at this point. I can't say it enough. We do not teach critical race theory. And yes, Will Cates, our mental health coordinator, is someone that we trust in his professional judgment and will continue to do so. And that's it, unless there are more questions.
It doesn't specifically list it on here, but when you talk about social emotional learning, I mean, really, we start that in the preschool. In theory, that's what preschoolers need to learn, how to interact appropriately with peers. And so I do think as a district, even if it's not, you know, in here, it's actually a pre-K skill that our teachers focus on.
Yes, it goes back to sort of the quote that everything I learned and I need to know I learned in kindergarten. So yes, we do. It's nothing. We've been teaching social emotional learning for eons, you know, teaching kids how to be empathetic, and you know, it's part of our portrait to be empathetic lifelong learners, and we will continue to do so.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item C, which is our first public commentary. You'll have each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, up to a maximum of 30 minutes, and you'll speak. On this first public commentary, the item has to be related to our board agenda for the evening. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Gina Springer.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Gina Springer. I live at 5201 Beechwood Road, Milford, Ohio, 45150. Thank you, President Ham and members of the board, for your service to our district. I have 2 children who attend Pattison. I have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader. While other community members have brought to light the problems of masks and many reasons why they should not be required, I would like to discuss an alternative to masks in regards to the issue of avoiding quarantine. This is more to the parents than to the board, although the board can take it under consideration in regards to when to decide to remove the mask requirement. From watching the discussions of the school board members from August 16th onward, I've seen one driving theme, besides the issue of health, leading to the continued masking of all children in K-6 schools. The theme has been keeping children in school, which we all agree on. Parents, teachers, and school board members all want children in school. We all want healthy children in school. So despite the what-if worries of the board members and the doctors and others regarding the Delta variant, COVID has not been a serious health risk to children. Yes, some of them can get sick, but it is not a serious health risk. So the only remaining reason to require masks is simply to keep children out of quarantine if they're exposed. So the alternative to masking is to stop testing sick children. If your children are sick, please keep them at home. If they have a cold, if they have the flu, sometimes you don't know what they're sick with. This is normal in life. We're sick, we stay home. So, I mentioned this to the community. Please keep your children home. If they are not officially COVID positive, if they haven't taken the test, then they do not require anyone that they have been around to be quarantined. This is a legitimate way to get rid of the fear of children missing school due to the COVID quarantine rule. It is a way around the rule. So again, if your child is sick, please keep them home. Please help them to get healthy so that they can get back in school. We should be quarantining the sick, not the healthy that are exposed to the sick. Thank you, and I believe that is all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rebecca Bourne.
I'm Rebecca Bourne, 1106 Fox Run Road in Milford. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the policies. I took some time to read that. The vaccination policy, good for you for allowing parents to decline for good cause or religion. I'm hoping that you're following that recommendation in your policy. Great that you don't require unapproved FDA vaccinations. I am, however, concerned about the coercion I hear around vaccinations. I heard the superintendent last month say mask or vaccinate. I also wanted to comment on the family life sex education policy. I appreciate the inclusion of House Bill 110 that provides for parents an opt-in regarding sex education that is beyond the state requirements, because I'm concerned and watching for the comprehensive sex education program that I believe is not something we need to have taught in school. The superintendent also talked about social emotional learning and the use of the Panorama Survey. I urge you to take a second look at that. I want to tell you a little bit about Panorama. First of all, a survey is designed to measure social and emotional climate. I'm not sure why we as a school are involved in measuring that and making recommendations about it. Panorama does receive the data. It's not something that stays here in the school. And I also appreciate the superintendent's understanding and reassurance that you're not teaching critical race theory. However, Panorama does have an intention, you have to dig for it, but they have an intention to suggest critical race theory as a result of the data that they're receiving. And I was reading some of the questions that we're asking the kids in the survey, and the first one of them says, how well do you deal with differences between kids? And I'm thinking, most kids don't even notice the difference. I'm not sure why we're even bringing that to their attention. And then Zuckerberg of Facebook fame is one of the financial contributors and on the board, and we are well aware of his control of narrative. But I think most important is to know that Panorama is owned by the son-in-law of the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who just issued a call against parents disrupting school boards and calling them domestic terrorists. Perhaps he already knows the intention of the Panorama company and is shutting down the objections. So I ask you to kind of look at it carefully and be aware if there is a gateway that you're not opening it to CRT. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Klein.
Hi, Randy Klein, 939 Riverside Drive here in Milford, and I'm a grandfather of a student in the district. My question simply is, and I'm sorry I interrupted before. I didn't realize when they asked for questions that things have changed over the years since I was here. I'd like to know if I can get the date of when that Enquirer piece was written. So I can read, about the proficiency stuff. Because they used to say I read it in the Enquirer. Well, we don't get the Enquirer, so therefore I need a little help. So that's what I need.
Thank you, and we can get that.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, seeing no more public commentary, we'll move on to item D on our agenda this evening. This is the Board of Education District Masking Update. Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. Before I proceed this evening, it is ironic that you bring up that I did say mask or vaccinate, but I didn't say you had to mask or vaccinate. What I'm going to say, and I'll say it again, is there's one way to avoid quarantining right now from the Claremont County Public Health, and that is either to have a mask on or to be vaccinated or be 6 feet apart. And so it's just, parents need to be aware of that. No matter what is decided here or in the future, one way to avoid quarantine from the Claremont County Public Health is to either be vaccinated or to wear a mask. Currently, there are approximately 211 cases per 100,000 in Claremont County. And so we we had talked about looking at some metrics and some of the things that you might consider as we move forward. And some of those items that I would suggest that you look at would be percent positive in the building, the percent positive students that would be in each building. Certainly a 7-day average of cases. Next you could look at cases per 100,000. If we all remember, Governor DeWine came up with this, the number of, in June, cases per 100,000 to take the masks off, so that could be something that you could consider. The percent being quarantined in each building, certainly attendance rates, and then I know that some of the board has talked about vaccine availability, and that, of course, will probably become available to families if they so choose in November. But with all that said, we did just have fall break. We just returned from fall break, so I would like for you to consider that and what that brings for us. And then also Halloween. History tells us that Halloween last year we had to close some school because of Halloween and the spread of the virus. So I think that's something we should consider as well. I would suggest that we wait to Halloween and see what happens after Halloween before we do anything. That would be my suggestion. That's after consulting with our district nurse and just having those conversations about what that could mean for us and flipping back and forth, if you will. So that's my update.
I guess from a time standpoint, Halloween, 7 days later, we have a result, whether it's positive or negative, pretty much.
Yeah,
correct?
talking to Patty, we discussed it. Halloween's on a Sunday. We would know probably by Thursday or Friday what the outcome would be of that. That's what we found out last year. We did not have an issue similar to Halloween with Thanksgiving or even after Christmas. We did come back in January. We were back 1 week. I believe we shut down the high school for a little bit. But I think that was a result of some rising cases, but also the fact that we couldn't staff substitutes. Teachers being quarantined and or isolating. So I think that the Halloween was our biggest issue last year. So I think that's something we have to consider.
The irony of the only holiday where masks are actually put on being the worst issue for us. I think the good news is that the community numbers are going down. Our school numbers are going down. There's a pilot program in Warren County right now on the quarantining process that we expect that Ohio will take a look at that and see how well that's working. Initial reports are it's going very well, which could really change the way we quarantine kids within our schools as they get close contact. And then there appears to be a vaccine for 5 to 12 that is on the verge of approval for those that want to take that or want their kids to take that. So there's a lot of good things that are happening to get us hopefully back to a point where we can make a decision to remove these masks at some point in the future.
I agree. I'm glad to see I feel like I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and we're making progress. I think the 7-day average is important. John, you mentioned it's at about 200 now. We were at 4 something last month, so that's a big improvement. We're halfway there. If we look at this graphic that we showed last month, it says moderate transmission is when that number gets 49 or less. So that's the yellow. So we're at 211 now. I think that I am a little bit concerned to use positive in building numbers because we're kind of a small number total. And if there are families out there that are choosing not to test, I just don't think our buildings alone are any of them big enough to be a true reflective. I feel more comfortable with the county data or kind of a bigger data.
Unless you take the data, certainly look at the data by building, and I know Mr. Spicer does that on a regular basis, and we have actually had one instance this year where we've shut down for
a second grade at SciPel.
Second grade at SciPel. But if you look at the data for all elementaries. Yeah, you're playing whack-a-mole a little bit at every school. You'll have somebody get sick, and because the numbers are so small, 1 or 2 cases pulls you above this, but 1 or 2 cases over the aggregate of all elementary schools, it moves the needle, but it doesn't move it as much. And I think that if you look at the total area, that helps. What I've been looking at is I've been looking at by zip code. And we talk about south side of town, north side of town, and town. South side of town, which happens to be you and Chris, and you know, you're down over the last, the numbers as of today for the last 14 days, 80 cases per 100,000. A little bit higher on the north end of town, which is where I am, over in 45140, and it's 145 cases. In Milford, as of today at 2 o'clock, 285 cases, almost double what it is on the north side and over triple what it is on the south side. And if you look at it by building, and maybe you're kind of twisting your head sideways to rationalize, but if you look at it, you can see buildings on the north and the south side having much better performance with regard to COVID than overall. And not that they don't have a spike here or there, but in general, you have I think we right now, Mr. Spicer, you can help me here on this, at Boyd Smith, we have 6 cases right now.
Correct.
And
There's a sibling group,
there's a sibling group,
multiple, like more than 2.
which, yeah. So you deal with that, and that's going to drive a number up higher, but it doesn't move the needle on the entire district. So, I would recommend that we look at aggregate as well as individual buildings. Individual buildings for outbreaks or isolated cases, but if we're going to make a decision, I believe we should be making it based on the aggregate for the district.
And I think did I mention this before, the vaccine availability, I think, will help for people who want to choose that as an option to keep their family safe. And hopefully it's very soon.
And where I was headed before was Halloween's on the 31st every year. The 7th, we would have an indication by the 7th or the 8th as to where we are. If it moved the needle, if it didn't move the needle. There is a school board in November. We always recognize our veterans as close to Veterans Day as we can, and we do have a board meeting on the 11th. So we may see a little bit more pointed conversation at that point, I think.
We also had to shut the high school after Thanksgiving last year, though.
That's true.
So, and we're heading, what?
Prior to, we shut down prior to.
Prior to. Before, after? When did we shut the high
It
school?
was 2 days prior to, and then thereafter,
And
yes.
then after. But we are also about to head, we've had all this great fall weather, but we are about to head inside for all gathering activities inside and outside of school. Last year, the winter did not bode well for transmission in general.
And just a small correction, our board meeting next month is November 18th.
Is it the 18th?
Are you sure it's not the 11th?
Oh, it's the 11th.
Wait, let's look at the back of this.
Let's have an argument.
November 18th.
We may want to talk about that.
That is what I have on my calendar, I see.
Earlier. Didn't it say November 11th on the website earlier? Thank you. It did say November 11th. Thought I was going crazy.
Why don't we grab that at the other discussion at the very end, talk about the board meeting, whether you want to do the 11th or the 18th. I have it, I've got it on both.
I only have it on the 8th.
Let's have 2 then.
I'm good.
Yay.
And my calendar shows the 18th, and I did
Yeah.
that at the beginning of the year, so all the dates that were set at the organization meeting. I think the point has been made by a couple of people that, and if people listen to anything that I've said, it's my principal concern has been the quarantine system and keeping people in school. And I really think that the statistics that we've seen, that we have done a good job of that, that we have kept an awful lot of people out of quarantine with the mask mandate. Our numbers are really looking good, and I raised the question that maybe we were just about at the point that we should lift the mandate. But I think with the caveat that with Halloween coming up, that maybe we should give it just a little bit more time. But I think we're getting there. I think we're getting very close.
Yeah, I think we're getting there as well. Still being at 200, that's concerning. And yes, it's in the community and not the schools. But that doesn't mean that it won't come into the schools. I think it's a great idea to wait and see what happens with Halloween, especially given that we know that last year that was a problem. And I too would feel a lot more comfortable when we have the vaccine available for the younger students, for anybody who wants that. You know, then there's a choice, there's a way for them to be protected if they want to be. And it's not as important for us to make sure that everybody is masked to help that protection. In the data from that John, you sent from the Health Collaborative.
The Health Collaborative.
Yeah, I mean that, you know, they're not changing anything they've been saying, which is the layers of protection, which includes vaccination. And, you know, as that vaccination is expanded, then that helps us with other, do things like take off masks. The community data is one of the considerations that they use as well.
Any other comments? You good? No. All right.
Yes.
We'll move on to our treasurer's report. Treasurer Brian Rabe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is the approval to recommend the approval of the board reports for the month ending September 30th, 2021.
We need a motion to approve the board reports month ending September 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Just a couple items to point out. Last year, we did receive the rollback at Homestead from the state, which equates to about $2.2 million. We have not received that yet from the state. It's simply a timing issue. I expect we'll receive it sometime later this month. Also, I wanted to point out that we had talked about the new state funding formula, and we were originally told from the state is we would have the details that back up the numbers from the state funding formula. We would have that here in October. Unfortunately, the end of September, we've received notice from ODE that because there's so much involved with it, they're not going to have that ready for us until December. So I was hoping to be able to present that to you here in October, but obviously I won't be able to do that until December. So we'll still wait on that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you.
Next item is the disposal of items from St. Mark's that were purchased with auxiliary service money.
We need a motion to approve the disposal of items purchased with auxiliary services monies for St. Mark's.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second.
This is just anytime, because they use auxiliary money, anytime they want to dispose of something that they purchase, they have to come to the board.
Is this one of the items that's changing how auxiliary money flows? So will we not need to do this in the
Yeah,
future?
This
This will still remain.
still stay in place. Yeah, the auxiliary service money is the state money that the non-publics receive, and we are considered their fiscal agent.
Okay.
So yeah, everything has to be monitored through us.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady?
Yes.
Mrs. Chestnut?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Treasurer Rabe. We'll move on to Superintendent Business, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. Under letter F, we do have policies for a second reading. We did read them last month for the first time, 1 through 25.
We need a motion to approve policies 1 through 25
So
as
moved.
presented.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Comment? Hearing
All of
none.
these are pretty minor adjustments.
Yeah, these are the result of our policy meeting, and a lot of them, yeah, they're very small, you know, more legal wording changes than
Yep.
anything else. Okay, hearing no further comment, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. We'll move on to item G, our Human Resources Business, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham, members of the board. Under item number 1, asking for your approval to approve the attached job descriptions 1 through 5.
Okay, under item number 1, the motion to approve job descriptions 1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Comments, questions?
These are updated, they're just updated job descriptions.
Hearing no further comment, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Under item 2, certified approvals, asking for your approval of the following items, items A through C.
Under certified approvals, we need a motion to approve items A through C.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Under item 3, classified approvals, A through G.
Need a motion to approve under classified approvals items A through G.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments or questions? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Under item 4, athletic extracurricular supplemental student recommendations for the 21-22 school year, items A through E.
Need a motion to approve under athletic extracurricular supplemental student recommendations for 21-22, items A through E.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Under number 5, approval of volunteers, asking for your approval under items A 1 through 4.
Approval of volunteers. I need a motion for
So
items
moved.
A 1 through 4.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. Moving on to curriculum and instruction, item H, Superintendent John Spicer.
Thank you, President Ham. Members of the board, under item number 1, asking for field trip approval. Number 1, February 9th, 2022 through February 14th, the UCA Cheer Nationals, Orlando, Florida. And item 2, March 4th, 2022 through March 7th, NDA High School Dance National in Orlando, Florida.
We need a motion to approve field trips items 1 and 2 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comment, questions?
Do they need any people to go as chaperones in February to Florida?
As long as you pass a background check.
I would love to do that. That's it.
They're reigning, this is where they're reigning champions? Yes, the
Yes.
cheerleaders are, no pressure. but
No
they
pressure.
did awesome last time.
Okay, hearing no further comment, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you.
Under item 2, curriculum pay, asking for your approval of curriculum pay, items 1 and item 2A through I.
Motion to approve curriculum pay, items 1 and 2 as presented.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments? Questions? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Moreta?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Chesler?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes, thank you. We're going to move on to item I, which is our Board of Education concluding items. And our first item under that section is our second public participation, where you have 1 hour max and 3 minutes apiece for anyone that would like to speak.
Rebecca Bourne?
I remember you. No.
Rebecca Bourne, 1106 Fox Run Road, Milford. Most of my life, I have had a drive to stand for justice. I never anticipated that this God-given passion would mean I would do battle against a corrupt system of government. When you all broke your oath and trampled on parental and constitutional rights, you opened the door for a battle bigger than just you. And I'm prepared and fit to see this battle win. In the Bible, David stood up against Goliath with his slingshot and won. I serve that same God. As you know, I did file a citizen's complaint against you with the sheriff, county prosecutor, and attorney general. All public servants who took a similar oath to yours to uphold the U.S. and Ohio Constitution. Oaths are serious things. They mean the public gives you their trust, and you swear before God to abide by that oath. They aren't just words. We, the people, expect you to honor your word before God and act in accordance with the directive of constitutional government. That means you, the sheriff, the prosecutor, and the attorney general are to protect our rights, not remove them. I still cannot believe that you think that a board of health, that a state board of education, that a governor, and even a president can tell you to make us wear masks. Either out of arrogance, ignorance, or direct opposition, or perhaps to see what I really know and how determined I am, none of the law enforcement officers are willing to take a stand to restore our rights. That should send a chill down every single one of you, because law enforcement people are telling us that they can do whatever they want and you don't matter. I discovered in the Ohio Code that our county prosecutor also acts as the legal advisor to the school board. That's a common practice when wrong. No wonder he investigated the case without talking to me, the complainant, and not advising me of his findings. Don't get comfortable. For those of you who remain after the election, and those of you who leave, you are still liable for your unconstitutional actions. I am moving forward. I don't back down.
30 seconds.
I'm taking the next steps, and now the sheriff, the prosecutor, and the attorney general, who all violated their oaths and did not protect my rights, will be included in my court actions. And in a bizarre way, you helped uncover the deep corruption that we the people will no longer tolerate.
Thank you. Okay, we'll conclude our second public participation and move on to the announcement of our next regular board meeting.
Which will be?
You gotta go ahead and do it first.
Currently is, okay, so the question regarding this board meeting, when we set the dates at the beginning of the year, what was the date that we set?
Likely the 18th.
The 18th. yeah.
It was.
Okay, so why would we change it?
Be- We have, over
Veterans.
your history and previous, we have always moved it forward to coincide as close as we could with Veterans Day so we can honor our veterans.
We
And-
definitely
Not-
discussed it.
Yeah, not always. It's usually, it's somewhere around there, but we did set the 18th, and it was on my calendar as the 18th too, but then it was on the district calendar as the 11th, and I think that's where the
Yeah,
confusion
and Jeff
came.
just mentioned the holiday parade that's usually on that Thursday, so that would be, we had it, I think, last year on the parade, and we wanted to make sure we were not on that date.
Yes.
There was
So-
no parade last year.
Maybe it was 2 years ago. I'm just kind of thinking through that a little bit.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we, a motion to adjust the agenda first, to make that date November 11th rather than November 18th. And then we can make a second motion to make it the 18th, right? So we want to alter the agenda first, right?
Wait a minute.
The 11th. Well, right now, on here, it's the 18th.
When's the parade?
The 18th.
Parade's the 18th.
The parade is the 18th, okay.
There's another good reason to do it.
Yeah, so November, I'm fine with November 11th if everybody else is.
I
just
have it on my
changed it on my
calendar as
calendar.
November 11th, and maybe I just,
John will be here both days.
You are premonitioning.
yeah.
You say I'll be at both?
You'll be at both, you got both days on your calendar.
I'll be at both, sure.
Yeah.
Clairvoyant, and I'll second your motion to move it to the 11th.
Well,
Well,
we're
first
going to
we have
make a
to change
motion
the
to
agenda.
change the agenda first. So-
Okay, I'll make a,
No, I made the motion to change the agenda.
Yeah.
we'll
You
second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. Now I'll make a motion that we, well, go ahead, I'll let you do that.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move the November 18th date to November the 11th to avoid a conflict with the parade and also to honor our veterans, not in that order.
I'll second that.
We've got a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. So now for the announcement, our next regular board meeting will be Thursday, November 11th, 2021, right here at 1099 State Route 131, Milford, Ohio, 45150.
And now, Wendy, you can change it back on the website to the 11th again.
Okay, very good. Any discussion from our board members this evening? Any topics that you want to jump into? Oh, go ahead.
Well, if no one else does.
The only
I
thing
just-
the only thing I wanted to say is I'd like to thank the community and the board for getting me out on my wife's birthday so I can go celebrate it with her tonight.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday, Kathy.
I tried to capture some things from the first public commentary, and I just want to address the comprehensive sex education. We do not teach comprehensive sex ed. We don't teach kids how to pleasure themselves, et cetera. I just want to make sure that the community is aware of that. It's very important to us to note that you do know that. Nowhere in our curriculum do we do that. If you
And
have
that's one curriculum area where we follow the Ohio state standards.
We do. If you're interested in knowing exactly what happens, I invite you to contact Rob Dunn. Rob has been an elementary teacher. He's our assistant superintendent of elementary curriculum, has been an elementary principal as well, so he's been there, he's seen it, he's worked with parents. So I would highly recommend that if you have questions about it, what exactly it is, contact Rob. He'll make sure that you get that information. If you have secondary type health questions, then you could certainly reach out to Paul Daniels. He could talk to you about our health program. And so I think that's just very important. That's just not what we do. When you hear about those things, you do shake your head because that's just not what happens here in Milford. And I just want the community to know that that's not what we do. The other thing I wrote down, one of the first things I wrote down, the school district, we do not quarantine students. The health department does. I just think it's very important for the community to know that. That's not a function of the school. That's something that the Claremont County Public Health does. And if I may address your question about why we would ask about differences, here's why. My youngest son is adopted. He is Chinese. The first time I brought him on this campus, he was in 8th grade. And he saw a group of young boys running down Eagles Way cross country. I was taking him to junior high cross country, and he said to me, "Is this an all-white school?" So this child has lived his entire life here with us, brought him home when he was 18 months, and from that time that he was able to acknowledge himself and have self-awareness, he knew he was different. And so that's why we acknowledge differences. I agree with you. Trust and believe. You don't trust, I get it, but I want you to trust. We have this open dialogue. That's just not what we do, okay? And I'm okay with you pushing back. It's good. we're not afraid of that. So I just hope we can continue ahead to have an open dialogue. And then to anyone, and one final comment from me, anyone that's running for board, I sent you a personal letter. I sent you my business card. It's got my cell phone on it. If you have questions, just call. And if you call after like 9:30 p.m., I'm not going to answer it. I turn into a pumpkin.
All right, I'll be in touch with you then.
Yes.
At 9:29, he accepts calls.
Yeah, he knows better because he'll send me a text at like 11 o'clock. I know you're sleeping, but then I text him back at 4:30.
Good morning.
Touche, touche.
Touche.
Wait, adjourn. Did we officially adjourn?
We can do that. We need a motion.
Yeah, I move that we adjourn.
We've got a motion for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments?
Happy
Hearing none,
birthday,
roll call,
Kathy.
please.
Mr. Miranda? Mr. Miranda?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Yaki?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Hand?
Yes, thank you, and thanks everyone for coming this evening. And if you need signatures, come up. You can. Any of the five of us can sign your stuff.